Welcome to Central Missouri Alumni Stories. I'm your host, Corey Bittner. On this show, we talk with alumni from the University of Central Missouri. We ask them to tell their stories, talk about what they're doing now, and what comes next. Our guest today is Andrew Potter, the founder of RoKC, right here in Kansas City. Andrew, so thanks again for being here with me today.
Yeah, I'm really glad I could come in.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you and I kind of talked in advance of this recording about what we're doing with the show, how we're trying to bring on different alumni, have them kind of tell their stories, talk about where they've been, what they've done, ultimately how the university kind of helped prepare them for the success that they're having. So you certainly have an interesting story, an exciting one. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting into it now. All right, Andrew. So to get us kicked off here, first let's talk a little bit about you personally. Where are you from?
Yeah, so from Kansas City, grew up in Parkville, went to Parkville South High School, and before that I was actually in Germany. My dad was in the military, so we didn't really move to the Kansas City area till 1998, but then since then we basically call this home.
Okay. I don't know if I realized that. Where is your family from? Where's your father from originally?
So dad was from West Virginia.
Okay.
Mom was from Sandy, Oregon, which is just outside of Portland.
Okay.
And they met in Italy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wild.
That is wild.
Yeah.
But so they didn't have any really connection to Kansas City prior to landing here after Germany.
It was Leavenworth. My dad got brought here his last assignment and retired here. So.
Okay, good. And then this is obviously home for you now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's the only home that I've been in for more than 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yep. That's good. No, that is. I don't think I realized that. Now, you said Park Hill South High School. What led you to UCM?
Well, my brother was there, a couple years older than me, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in college. I knew that I wanted to do an ROTC program.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to go to the military, and I kind of applied other places. I'd gone to other school visits, and what's really funny is my visit to UCM was a blast. I had so much fun, and and then I was like, I'm going to go to UCM, and everybody was like, no, you got to go check other schools. Don't go there just because your brother goes there or whatever.
Sure.
And then I went to Northwest, and they're showing us the dorms, and one of the dudes that I really didn't like from high school that picked on me a ton was in the elevator with his shirt off.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to this school.
All right, well, my mind's made up now. That's funny.
And then UCM became my school. So
okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you started at UCM, you were telling me earlier, so you were in ROTC all 4 years.
Yep.
That you were there. Is there any involvement, or what does that look like before college, or is it basically ROTC starts once you get to college?
Yeah,
it's my own ignorance.
There are definitely junior ROTC programs and whatnot. I never did that. I applied, for a 4-year scholarship. And they get allocated a certain number of them each year and whatnot. And I had earned a 4-year scholarship at a couple different schools. Some schools a smaller scholarship, but yeah, I applied knowing that I wanted to eventually be an officer and do ROTC, and so did that right out of high school.
Okay, all right. So then there was 4 years of ROTC when you were in school in Warrensburg. What was that experience like?
It was definitely, it was really fun. It was really enjoyable. I really loved the ROTC program. I really loved the camaraderie and brotherhood that I gained from that. Most of my friends that I currently still have that I would have had from college, most of them came from the ROTC program and kind of that. It continued to allow me to compete just because we compete in different military competitions, and you learn a lot of very unique skills, especially if you're like me and you like being outdoors.
Sure.
And you like doing that kind of stuff. It gave you access to that. And then there was this really awesome sense of pride, wearing a uniform on campus and going to class knowing I'm leaving school to serve my country.
Right.
The thing that I really, really care about. And that was probably one of the biggest things for me was the fact that my freshman year, I think I had terrible grades, and I was a typical idiot freshman that didn't do all the right things. But I realized how it hurt my like ROTC kind of career to an extent. It was almost like playing a sport from the perspective of I cared more about really doing well for ROTC so that I could leave and be a good officer than I cared about like other things. And so it really kept me in check. And honestly, without the ROTC program, I don't know that I would have succeeded as much as I did my sophomore, junior, senior year, because it was something that really was a needed structure for me to kind of like knock me off my pedestal and be like, fix your stuff.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, I think that was the most important piece of that for me.
That's great. Now, again, I would imagine that no two ROTC programs are created equally. I mean, from school to school, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be different in a lot of places, but it sounds like the one that you had the experience that you had at UCM was a positive one from doing that, and it sounds like there's some pretty solid relationships that you've built.
Yeah, absolutely.
Going through that.
Instructors change and things change over time, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that had very different experiences than I did. But
true, right?
It's definitely part of why I am who I am today.
Okay,
and so that's important.
No, it is, and that is an important part. When did you know that ROTC is something you wanted to do?
I don't.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Maybe a different or a better question to ask would be, when did you know that, one, I guess going to college, and then two, serving your country were things that, that you wanted to do?
Well, serving my country, I kind of guess I grew up watching my dad being like, well, this is what I'm going to do. It was just never a second thought of like, what else would I do?
Yep.
Type thing. And then with going to UCM, it was after going to other schools and whatnot, and seeing that one, it was close to Kansas City, which is home, which I've got younger siblings and we're a pretty tight family, and so it was far enough away that mom wasn't going to show up at school, but it was close enough that I could get back fairly easily.
Sure.
And then I got a great offer for a scholarship, and that was all really important. And so, yeah, I think that probably came, the end of my senior year in high school when I was making that decision. Yeah.
Okay. So going through that ROTC program while you were in college, what were you studying?
I studied criminal justice with a minor in military science.
Okay.
And originally I was like, I want to take the LSAT. I want to see if I can become a lawyer. Mm-hmm. I had a fascination with law, and then after school, which I wasn't terrible at, but I wasn't excellent at, I also realized that like I want to do what I enjoy doing for my life, and knowing that I was going to have to go through like 4 years of more school and whatnot to be an attorney, like that just it wasn't for me.
Sure.
And so I really enjoyed the criminal justice program. Mm-hmm. But I know it's also very revered. It's a really, really high quality program in the nation.
Absolutely.
But I knew I didn't want to be an attorney, and so like in retrospect, if I'd go back to school, like knowing where I'm at in my life now, I probably would have studied either psychology, because I'm fascinated by humans.
Sure.
and why people make the decisions they make and do what they do, mm-hmm. or I would have studied, business, economics.
Sure. No, that makes sense. But I would imagine, given the fact that the criminal justice major, the military science minor, and then going into the Army as an officer for 6 years.
Yeah, it all fit.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it all fit.
And that was, and I got that right. So it was 6 years then after you graduated that you were in the Army?
Yeah, so I commissioned, the day we graduated in May of 2009, and then I exited the military in 2015.
Okay. Well, good. Well, again, thank you for for your service and all that you
absolutely.
did, because that's something that not a lot of people would do.
Yeah.
And I admire the fact that you knew that that's what you wanted to do at such a young age.
Yeah, pretty wild. I now know, like, and looking back, like, that's not what I was going to do for 20 years.
Right.
I didn't necessarily think that before.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wouldn't even have mind doing 4 years and getting out. For me, I think it was more about, I don't think I could have been 60 years old and looked back and been like, man, what if I would have done that?
Sure.
You know, I could have never like given myself a break if I had, like, I had to serve my country. And
that would have always been hanging over you.
Yeah, always. No matter what else I did in life, I would always been like, but what if I would have done that?
Sure.
And I don't have to think about that.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I know what that, I check that box.
No, I would imagine that it is one of those things, again, this is coming from ignorance asking this question, but are there some students, I would think there's maybe a decent amount of people that do go to college, join ROTC, and don't see it through.
Yeah, some people join ROTC or even just take the military science classes.
Yeah, okay.
Just for as almost like an extracurricular, one for the education of it, but also because some of the classes can be like really fun, really enjoyable. And yeah, some people choose not to commission at the end, just because they realize, man, this isn't my path.
Right.
And it's not everybody's path. And,
of course. And
that's my thing is like, you know, everybody serves in different ways. And, you know, some people start it and they're like, wow, serving my country, like for me would maybe be miserable because I just don't enjoy doing this. And I'm like, yeah, then you shouldn't do that. Like,
right, that seems so obvious, right?
Yeah, why would you do something?
Yeah.
Like you're not obligated to do this. Why would you do something if it's going to be a miserable part of your life? Like there's other great ways you can serve.
Of course.
You know, and so I think for people like myself who felt like called to do it and loved it when they did it,
yes.
Yeah, it's great. But for people that start the ROTC program and they're like, this isn't my jam, I'm like, the sooner you figure it out, the better. And go figure out what else you want to do with your life.
Yep, that's good. Because I guess I was thinking of that more about coming from a place that, you know, frankly, when some, you know, young adults at 18, 19 years old are going off to college, they think they know what it is that they want to do. But the reality is, I mean, the discipline, the structure, all the things that came from, you know, the military and the ROTC, everything that you were a part of is probably not for everyone. Or they just don't lack maybe they do lack the discipline or the tenacity to stick with it. Yeah,
well, I mean, it's like law school. Probably one of the things that told me maybe law school wasn't for me was the only class that I read to drop was Dr. Dane Miller's class, and that was like the law class. And I walked into the first test thinking I was prepared, and then just got like dominated.
Yeah, sure.
And I think I got like a 40% on the test. There was no way I could bounce back, and I had to drop the class. And then ROTC was like, "We're going to drop your scholarship unless you retake it this summer."
Really?
And so I had to stay for the summer, retake it, and then I realized like how challenging it really was.
Sure.
To do that, and how. And honestly, he was the best teacher I ever had at UCM. Like he's
Who was this?
Dane Miller.
Okay.
He was the only one that actually like really challenged me as a student. And the other classes I could do not as much and get by with a B. And his class, it was like, if you don't work hard, you're gonna fail. And that was really formative for me too. But it also made me realize, man, like he's probably giving me the most honest perspective of what it means to like be an attorney one day.
Sure.
And this isn't for me. Like and so no different than someone being in the ROTC program and walking away. I'm glad I did not become an attorney.
Yep.
or try to go down that path, you know?
Yep, absolutely. What before we kind of move past that, I just more kind of off the cuff here, whether it was, you know, academic or social or whatever it might be, what are some of your favorite memories from Warrensburg? Or the university or whatever it might be?
Oh man, I don't know. There was something about Warrensburg being like Kansas City, where it's just like a big small town. Mm-hmm. Like you could always live like 2 blocks off of campus.
Sure.
And make it to class, and like campus was enjoyable to me. Like walking like to class and being places. Like I really had fun with that. And man, intramural sports. It was such a community thing, and it was so much fun to be in a classroom with 25 or 40 people, and that's like when I went to Mizzou and I walked into like a basics class or whatever, and there was 1,000 students in there, and I was like, no way. Yeah. Like I had, and that probably leads me to the answer that is probably the real answer for me was I got to have relationships, like with my teachers. I actually like when I was struggling, I got to go be like, hey, like I'm struggling. Can
you help me out here?
Can you help me out here, or can you give me some extra time or whatever? And I had teachers that really worked with me when either I screwed up or I just like wasn't there. And there's no way I would have gotten that at a different school.
Right.
And so that was helpful for me because I wouldn't say I was like the greatest student ever. It was just because I was more like, oh, hey, squirrel, you know, like
Sure.
I was all over the place with everything I was doing. And fortunately, like I could have actual like relationships with my teachers from the perspective of them knowing who I am. And that was pretty great for me.
Absolutely. And I also think from the professor's standpoint, this is just anecdotal or maybe my opinion, but I would think that there's some level of you feeling like they had a vested interest in you.
Yeah.
Or you feeling like you had a relationship with them. I would imagine that a lot of the professors feel like, you know, these students, I have a vested interest in them and their success because they're not just a number, right? There's more to it than that.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to the memories piece, like there's probably a lot of great individual stories or memories.
Sure.
But I think one of the best things for me was more of a feeling of community.
Yeah.
Being at that school, because it was big enough, but it wasn't a mega D1 university where like you don't see the same people walking across campus every day.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that.
Yep, absolutely. So then, you know, let's talk a little bit more though about what you were doing now. So graduated 6 years as an officer in the Army, finished in 2015, and then you founded ROKC. So first off, why don't you tell us, or you know, tell the people that are watching and listening to this a little bit about what ROKC is and, you know, where you got the idea.
Yeah, so ROKC is a rock climbing and fitness company. We're currently building our third location in Olathe, Kansas. It's a 35,000 square foot ground up new build. And, you know, it'll have your, you know, rock climbing walls, and it'll have your bouldering walls, which are a shorter style of climbing, and then I'll have 6,000 square feet of fitness, like saunas, yoga studios. We're opening a full coffee shop and bar down there, and then Moose Jaw Mountaineering is going to be putting on a full retail location in that development. And so that's what it's evolved into. Is really a fitness company, because we do yoga and we do traditional fitness as well. But the original, you know, dream back in 2000, let's say 13, when I was in Afghanistan, was I was actually struggling from my experiences at war, and one of the things that gave me peace and hope was the mountains, and the one thing that dragged me to the mountains was climbing. And in many ways, I say climbing saved my life, because it gave me something more to live for. It gave me something to truly appreciate and love, and really climbing was the tool. It's what pulled me into the outdoors, pulled me into the mountains, and I had been doing it for a long time. A friend and I had started the University of Central Missouri Climbing Club.
I remember that.
Yeah, back in like 2007, and we climbed Humphreys, and I mean,
I remember that.
It wasn't a great club,
hey,
but
that's all right.
But it was ours, you know.
Yep.
And so basically what happened was I knew I didn't want to spend 20 years in the military. I had done three tours to Afghanistan back to back, and but I knew I wanted to, one, continue to serve people, and two, I wanted to find something that I could wake up and do every day and just like really enjoy. And I was like, well, what about this rock climbing thing? I love this rock climbing thing. And like I said, it saved my life. If I was like, you know what, if I could give what was given to me to one other person, then it'd all be worth it. And then if I could make enough money to like raise a family and like have a business, that would be great too. Yep. But like I don't need this to be an explosion. I just want to build something that I love to do every day. And that was my exit strategy from the military. And so in 2015, when I got out, I basically went straight to raising some money and working on getting an SBA loan to build the first location. Sure. And now, you know, 3.5 years later, we're on our third location, and yeah, it's been great. But it all came from just kind of the desire to do something that I want to do every day, serve others. Yep. In the way I was served, and just yeah, and kind of build a company that I could enjoy building a team around.
Sure, and it sounds like that's what you're doing now. And you said you felt back then like you didn't need this to be an explosion, and then 3.5 years later, here you are building gym number 3, 35,000 square feet, yoga studio, bar, coffee bar.
Yeah, it's wild.
Retail location. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for the success that you guys have had. What do you think? I'm sure this is probably kind of hard to pinpoint, but what would you say that you attribute the success that you all have had thus far? What do you attribute that to? What are the maybe a handful of items that you can kind of say, I really think this is why we've been able to succeed?
So there's a couple things. I wouldn't say I'm like an expert business owner. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I'm like a legit CFO. And my brother, who's my co-founder, mm-hmm. He's really our chief financial officer.
Right.
But what I am great at is building teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that came from like failures from the military. That came from, when you make a mistake in Afghanistan, people die.
Right.
When you make a mistake in business, you lose some money. So I learned really, really, really hard lessons at a young age, like 24,
Sure.
Just being put in hell and trying to get out of that. So when it came to like building a company, if I knew this is what I wanted to do, I went all in.
Sure.
I didn't fear losing money. I didn't care about like failure. Failure for me was not trying.
Yep.
Failure for me was making mistakes and not learning from it. Failure wasn't like not being rich or not being successful. And so being in the military and taking that path really gave me a sense of resilience and a very, very high tolerance for risk.
Sure.
A risk that would most likely scare most people because I've emptied my entire savings. I've drained everything I have. I've leveraged everything I have to make my business happen. And I don't think twice about it because I'm like, no, that's just what needs to be done.
Yep. Like
if we want to make this a reality, that's what it takes. And so I'd say that's the first thing is the military definitely taught me a lot of resilience. And partnering with my brother, my best friend, it's really hard. Like even as humans, we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to do things alone. You're mm-hmm. meant to do things in community. You're meant to do things with other people, and people have different talents than you. I'm great at building teams. Frank's really great at taking an unbiased perspective of the business and being like, I get that like serves the community really well, but that's not a good monetary decision for the business.
Sure.
And so where a lot of times my heart is very absolutely in the center of like the community and stuff. My brother's like, yeah, and we're building a business and I love the community too, but this isn't something that's going to serve the community in the long run because of these things. And so partnering with my brother is another big piece of why I'd say we're successful, because we're very similar. We're best friends. So we want to defeat each other in every manner possible.
Sure. Like one wants to come out on top.
Whether it's ping pong or something else. But we also have very, very different skill sets.
Sure.
So building and growing the operations in the team, that's something I'm very, very good at. Like focusing on what he does within the financials and making sure we're making like good development decisions, or if it's a real estate purchase, making sure we're getting, the best tax credits we can on that. Like
sure.
My brother crushes that. And so having him as a partner has been huge, because all that weight's not on my shoulders to do all of it. Because if it was, there'd be things slipping through the cracks.
Sure.
And I would say the last thing is coming from failures in the military and some of the things I didn't like from a leadership perspective. I chose to lead differently than I was led, or that I even led in the military. And so when I hire and I build a team, instead of focusing on like talent or resume, I focus on character. I focus on just hiring good humans, because I figure for the most part I can train them to do what I need them to do.
Right.
And so we focus on just hiring good people that want to learn, that have a heart for serving people and doing great things for the company and are willing to grow with us.
Yep.
And then from that, we're able to build a team of servant leaders who just want to crush it. Not only for the company, but for the people around them, for their coworkers, for the people that are walking in the door. And that's built a foundation for our company. Like, people don't necessarily see that. They don't read our operations manual. They don't see our interviews. But people feel that as a part of the community. And it's not a business model, right? But I would say it's a big player in why we are successful. Because we're building a community from like a foundation of just like great humans that want to serve others.
Yep.
And there's reciprocity in that. Like, people walk in the doors and they're like, man, I leave ROKC feeling better. And maybe I don't even know why, but like the people that were at the front desk, I don't even know those people, and they treated me like I was family. And that's really, really important to us. And I would say those are probably three of the biggest things that have helped us become what we are today.
That's awesome. That's really good stuff. So it sounds like, summarizing that, you have, being maybe what I would say, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying hyper aggressive, but being aggressive on going all in, right? And something that you want to do.
Yeah.
And understanding, not being afraid, I guess, of failing.
Yeah.
And really giving it what you've got. And then whether it's partnering, with your brother or the team that you've built around you, I think surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of what, that's been a couple of the keys to success for you.
Oh, for sure. For sure. A lot of the other little things fall into place when you're willing to grind and work hard, and you're surrounded by great humans.
Yep. Did you absolutely, whether it was in college or military or thereafter, I mean, what was your personally experience with, or I guess what entrepreneurial experience did you have?
Oh, none.
None.
Absolutely none. I mean, I guess being an officer in the Army, and especially after I was in the 82nd Airborne, I went to the Rangers. And so when I was in the Ranger Regiment, there's a lot of new things in the Special Operations Command that like you just don't know how to do yet. And like, you're one of the most elite officers in the United States military. Like, if you show up to a meeting unprepared and you're like, well, I didn't know about that, someone's going to crush you. Yeah. Someone's going to absolutely destroy you. Like, if you don't know something, you go learn it and figure it out. You don't like, and that's the culture. Like, if you don't know something, learn it. Like, you are supposed to be the best of the best. There's 20 dudes behind you ready to take your job that are just as good as you. And so coming from that culture, like knowing I wanted to own a business and start a business, it was like,
figure it out.
I don't know what EBITDA is. I'll go learn what that is. Like, I don't know what an ROI is or why that's important to an investor. I'll go learn what that is. Like, I want to get an SBA loan. The first bank we went to, I knew more about the SBA lending program for a business like mine than they did.
Really?
Yeah, and
I believe it.
And it was just because I was like, I want to get an SBA loan. I'm going to read everything I can. If I'm going to build projections for my business, how do I determine how much my heating and cooling is going to cost for a giant warehouse space, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah, exactly.
So I spent 10 hours researching how to actually, and turns out there's literally EPA charts that will tell you for a building this size that's cooled or heated in this manner in this zone of the United States, this is how much you can expect to pay per square foot. And I'm like, we're looking for a 20,000 square foot building. I can average it at this. But it was no one sat there and taught me how to do it. I just knew that I don't have a financial advisor. I have no business experience. I don't have anything. I just need to learn stuff.
Yep.
And I think that was one of the most important things, because when you build your business plan or you build your company based on the knowledge you went out and attained, and someone just doesn't hand you the answers.
Yes.
When you sit in front of a bank or investors or whoever and talk about it, you're not fumbling through your notes to figure out what that number is.
You know it.
Those numbers are yours. You've earned every bit of that. So when you look at my business model or ask me about it, I don't need to look at anything. I know the business inside and out. So when something looks funny or off, it's very obvious to you because you're like, that's not right. And it's because you've built this thing from like the ground up. And so, yeah, I think that just came from, again, being in the military, and people just expect you that if you're going to walk in and talk about something, that
you're going to know what the heck you're talking about.
You're going to know what you're talking about. Yeah. So.
I can imagine. And that was, yeah, that's, it's interesting to hear kind of that timeline from when you talked about, going to school, thinking you wanted to be an attorney, not doing well in a class, to ultimately going into graduating, going into the military, eventually the Rangers, special operations, right, inside of the Army, graduating, leaving the military, starting a business, and, basically just kind of getting after it and figuring out what you had to do to be able to make that successful.
Yeah.
And it's all happened in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, I think sometimes about it, and I'm like, man,
yeah.
Sometimes I don't know if like my grind in the Army was harder, or if my grind outside was harder, or because now I'm in a different position where I'm like, I own I have 5 different businesses now, and I'm operating them, and I've got 2 kids under the age of 3, and I'm trying to grow a family and do new construction, and it's such a different world, but it's wild how relative it is, because in the Army it was like, if I'm going into a mission in the middle of a village, the consequences are death. And you understand those consequences, but it's still nerve-wracking. You still got to plan and all this stuff.
Of course.
And now, I'm not going to a mission in a village, but like the consequences are maybe Chapter 11, and I've got a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage, and I've got this year upwards of 100 employees that are counting on me to make proper business decisions.
Yep.
And
the stakes are high.
It doesn't feel less stressful.
Really?
Like, oh man, there's been some times we've been in situations that were just like tough, and I sat there and I was like, man, I'd probably be doing better in a gunfight right now.
Really?
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Like I'd be more comfortable like moving,
quite literally being at war.
Yeah, oh for sure. And like, because I don't know, in that instance, I'm not worried about like my 2.5-year-old. I'm not worried about my wife, like who I dragged into this crazy whirlwind of businesses,
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't know. It's pretty wild. It's been a crazy journey.
Well, hey, all the more power to you. I think you guys, you just keep at it with that same relentless, sort of approach and attitude you've had. I look excited. I look forward to seeing how much this continues to grow and seeing the success that you guys have. So
I appreciate it.
Of course. So with that kind of being said, making that transition, let's fast forward, right? So let's fast forward 5, 10, 15 years and beyond. I mean, what's next, right? Well, I know you're in the midst of what you're doing now and you're growing it and building it, but let's think long term. What's next for you? And what do you see the future looking like?
Yeah, we've looked at expansion of our RoKC. We've looked at Midwest opportunities. Mm-hmm. So within the kind of 5-hour drive range of Kansas City, if we want to expand the business that way. We've also looked at national opportunities, whether it's coasts or south of here, or in the Front Range. And I think what we realized is we really love where our company's at. We really love Kansas City, and like national expansion would put us in a position where we have to travel a lot and hard travel, like not something where we're like taking our families with us.
Yeah, right.
And then you're adding another 30, 40 employees per location to manage it. And it just, you end up taking on a lot more to do that. So I think in the next 5 years, there's a potential, depending if the model in Olathe does really well, which is kind of that we're the developers, we own the climbing gym and then a coffee shop bar, and then we lease out, retail space to another tenant.
Sure.
If that model ends up cash flowing properly and working really well, I believe we would duplicate that model probably 1 to 2 more times in the next 5 years within that 5 hours of Kansas City, whichever market opportunities present themselves and look good, because we've had offers for other developments, and some of them look great and it's a poor timing, and some of them are just like not good deals. So it really depends on what's presented, but I think we could continue to grow the company to around 5 or 6 facilities in the next 5 years. And to be honest, I don't know if we'd want to do more than that.
Yep. Kind of have to see how it goes, right?
Not just that, but see what the economy's doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the reality is, yes, we are a fitness company, but we are heavy on the rock climbing side. Like, we're not necessarily a Genesis,
Sure.
where you've got swimming pools and tennis courts,
Yep.
and you know what I mean. And so we are still somewhat niche. And even though that the sport of climbing is becoming more relevant, it'll be the 2020 Olympics. It's still niche, and the problem is, if there was a 2007 market crash, right?
Sure.
Is somebody going, man,
A financial crisis, yeah.
I gotta pay rent this month, or I could pay for my rock climbing membership.
Sure, yeah.
So we have a margin of buffer that we know we would be fine,
Of course.
in that instance, but we wouldn't necessarily be expanding. And with how kind of niche our product is in those senses, to say, hey, our 15-year plan is to open 10 more facilities, it's kind of hard to say at this point.
Understood.
And the reality is, my brother's got 3 kids under 3. I've got 2 kids under 3 right now. And part of us is like, hey, when we're a 150, 200 person company running all these facilities, are we going to be in a position where we want more responsibility,
Yep.
more staff,
I understand.
and so I think you'll continue to see steady growth from our community, and I think we could even add on a facility in Kansas City if membership grew to a point where facilities were oversaturated.
Sure.
And it's not really a zero-sum product, Like, there's 2.34 million people in the metro.
Yep.
I don't have 2.34 million members.
Right. I understand.
There's always people that are 35 years old and they've still never tried rock climbing.
Right.
There's always people, and based on my math and the numbers we do, it would take me 110 years to touch every unique person
Yep.
in the metro. So it's just like, there's plenty to go around right now for introducing people to the sport, and so I think it'll kind of show itself how these facilities are doing and growing in the next 5 years, and then we'll determine from there if we want to keep growing.
That's good. Do you ever think, more personally, thinking beyond that? I mean, with your wife and your family, you think about life after work. Thinking about, I know you're young, obviously, but you think about not working and doing what you're doing now. Do you give that much thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll be honest. My wife and I decided, a while back that this is the time in our life to grind, because if we leverage it and we work to build something great while we have the stomach to do it, the heart to do it, the energy to do it,
sure.
And it fails, we can still bounce back.
Right.
It's not going to be the end of the world. It would suck really bad, but we would get through it. I don't want to be 45 trying to start a new business with kids in high school, or kids in middle school, And so for us, we decided that we would grind now, crush it now while our kids are not in school. Like, we have an easier time, because the reality is, I want to be at every soccer game.
Yep.
Like, I want to be at every dance practice or whatever my kids want to do.
Yep.
Like, I want to be present for that. And like, being the CEO of multiple companies doesn't lend itself to that. And,
right.
And that's not what I want, even 8 years from now.
Yep.
So the reality is, I I would happily, crush these couple years and then continue to run our companies, and then, looking to my early to mid 40s, like even stepping away from running the companies directly and being more of an advisor and being able to travel with my family.
Yep.
Or work remotely, from around the country and
Sure.
but yeah, no, I don't want to work 80 hours a week till I'm 60.
Sure.
And
Yep.
and that's why I'm attempting to do it now, so that we can put ourselves in a position where, yeah, we do have great companies that in many ways run themselves.
Sure.
And that we're still like involved in, but yeah, it's not my dream. Like even cutting down to 40 hours a week would be amazing. You know,
Yep.
like what I could do with that time.
Sure.
So yeah.
I get it. I totally understand. I know if and when, and it's probably a rarity for you too, but if you leave, your office or the gym or wherever it might be, at a normal time of the day, you wonder, gosh, what in the world would I do if I had this much time every day?
Yeah.
I know that feeling myself.
Yeah, and it's funny because I go from the office back to the home office.
Yeah, right.
You
right back to it.
Yeah, and
Well, keep it up. Keep it up.
I appreciate it.
I'm excited for you guys. All right. So we just have, one more quick segment here. What we're doing here is what we've called the Mule Minute.
Okay.
Right. So this is sponsored by Falcon Wealth Advisors.
Drink
so
some,
this is
drink
yeah.
some
There you
water
go.
for this.
What this is you have 60 seconds. Now I don't have a stopwatch or anything that I'm using here, but I'm going to rattle through some questions, and I really just want kind of answers off the top of your head. What's the first thing that you think of?
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. So first question is, and it's around 10 questions. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Okay, cool.
About 10 questions. All right. First off, we'll start easy. Question 1, what's your favorite food?
Pizza.
2, what's your favorite destination?
Red River Gorge, Kentucky.
Okay. 3, retire when?
45.
All right. Favorite sport?
But continue doing nonprofit work.
Okay. I like that.
Favorite sport? Rock climbing.
Of course, right? Stocks or bonds?
Stocks.
If you could go back in time, what year would you go to?
1942.
Okay. What profession would you like to try if it was anything other than your own?
What profession? I don't know. To being a pro athlete.
Okay.
Of any sort. Just
Okay.
being a pro athlete. I think it'd be cool.
What's your favorite way to spend your free time?
With my kids, and my wife.
That's good. Here's a fun one for you. If you walked in somewhere and there was a karaoke and you had to sing one song, what song would you sing?
Lion King. Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
Okay, all right. Good, good song. I like it. All right. And then lastly, this can pertain to anything. What is one piece of advice that you'd give someone?
The piece of advice I would give is screwing something up is not failure. Failure is when you screw something up and you don't learn anything from it. So if you're making mistakes, you're growing. If you're making mistakes, like you're becoming a better human, a better dad, a better business owner, a better entrepreneur, whatever it is. But if you're not learning from those mistakes, that's the only thing I see as a measure of failure. Like we're designed to screw things up and then become better and grow from it. So when things don't go great, like take it, learn a lesson from it, like and then drive on and just be better from it. And if you can consistently do that, I think it's really hard to not be successful, because you're at that point, instead of like dwelling on the hardships or the things that sucked or weren't easy or like you thought you got the raw deal, like you're like, okay, I'm gonna learn from this, suck it up, move on, and be better. But if you can't learn from it, then that's what failure looks like in my mind.
That's good. That's good. You did a good job. Thanks for participating. I wish I could tell you I had a prize or something for you, but I don't, for participating in the Mule Minute here. But you did a good job. I do. Go ahead.
I think I answered the Lion King question the fastest, which is
of all the questions, that's the one
concerning.
That's the one that I thought I would have stumped you on.
A little concerning.
But I do like your point though about learning from failure.
Cool.
So that's absolutely right. All right, and then lastly, just a question that we have, obviously on this show, and then my business partner and I have a different show called Upticks where we talk more about our business and finance specifically. But one of the things that we like to talk with our guests about, or one of the questions that we like to ask them is, what is the first lesson that you learned about money, or what's one of the most valuable lessons that you learned about money, and who taught it to you?
My family my dad was always really frugal, and so I'm going to take the one lesson he gave to me when he was driving this like 1990. This is like 2002. He's driving like a 1993 Honda Civic. It's like crap, and we live in a decent like middle class neighborhood. We have a nice house, but my dad's like he's a colonel in the Army. A lieutenant colonel. Like I know he makes like decent enough money. And every one of our neighbors is like Escalade, like new Suburban, like all this stuff. And I asked my dad, I was like, Dad, why don't you have like a nicer car? You're always like, think about it. I'm getting picked up in high school, and like the kids around me, I don't own a car. They all own like new Volvos and Mercedes, and I don't even have a car. And I'm like, Dad, why don't you have like a nicer car? I know you can afford it. And he goes, yeah, you know what? Our neighbors do have a lot nicer cars than us. And he goes, and they're all in debt up to their eyeballs.
Yep.
And I was like, He goes, we like to go on family vacations and put our money into those things.
Yep.
And so,
prioritizing. Yeah,
prioritizing where you put your money and what's more important to you. And you know what? Ain't nothing wrong with having a nice vehicle, at all. But it's almost like, where do you want to be in debt? If you're going to be in debt, I'd rather be in debt on an experience with my family than on, a possession or whatever it is. And so I realized early on that like it wasn't important to him, even if he could afford it, and it didn't matter. And that's been helpful. It's helped me to save more money. It's honestly, it's why I saved enough money in the Army to come out and start a business.
Yep. That's good. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think
absolutely.
That's good. That's good stuff. Now, again, I think that's about all the time that we have today. Okay. But again, I appreciate you coming on. For hopefully our viewers and our listeners, took something positive away from this. Don't forget that our page is called the Falcon Wealth Advisors Collective on YouTube. So there you can subscribe so you can make sure that you don't miss any more episodes of the show. If you have a suggested guest or an idea or feedback, criticism, whatever it might be, I can take that lightly. You can either find me on Twitter at Corey Bittner KC, or you can email me. It's Corey@FalconWealthAdvisors.com. And then Andrew, as far as your business goes, if people are looking for ROKC online, or you personally, where can they find that?
Yeah, you can reach out to our website, climbkc.com. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to reach out to me, I'm just going to give you the info at climbkc.com because my team will then manage kind of that traffic that comes in. So info.
Excellent. And then you guys are all over social media, I know.
Yeah, and so our social media is at ROKC Climb, and that's our handle, and that's going to be for both Instagram and Facebook. And then you can follow our other pages, which is at ROKC Climb Olathe, for example. So
perfect. All right, good. Well, thanks again. I appreciate you coming on, and good luck with everything.
Absolutely, thanks.
All right.
Advisors is a group of investment professionals registered with Hightower Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, and with Hightower Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities, LLC. Advisory services are offered through Hightower Advisors, LLC. This is not an offer to buy or sell securities. No investment process is free of risk, and there is no guarantee that the investment process or the investment opportunities referenced herein will be profitable. Past performance is not indicative of current or future performance and is not a guarantee. The investment opportunities referenced herein may not be suitable for all investors. All data and information referenced herein are from sources believed to be reliable. Any opinions, news, research, analysis, prices, or other information contained in this research is provided as general market commentary. It does not constitute investment advice. Falcon Wealth Advisors and Hightower shall not in any way be liable for claims and make no express or implied representations or warranties for completeness of the data and other information, or for statements or errors contained in or omissions from the obtained data and information referenced herein. The data and information are provided as of the date referenced. Such data and information are subject to change without notice. This document was created for informational purposes only. The opinions expressed are solely those of Falcon Wealth Advisors and do not represent those of Hightower Advisors, LLC, or any of its affiliates.